Global Church family. Welcome back to the ongoing conversation about international missions at Fellowship Bible Church, where you get a front row seat to hear what God is continually doing to establish His church around the world. My name is Emma Kate, and I'm your host for today, and we are joined by Miles Davenport from East Central Iowa, who is here today to share his story and how God has been working in his life and also in the Native community. So welcome, Miles. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. So by the time this airs, it'll be about a week ago that we had a global church night here at FBC, and we had you, and we also had Peter and Angela Adkins come and kind of share your story, but also talk about family camp. And so we had a pretty good turnout, but there's also a lot of people that weren't able to hear your story. So this is it. I wasn't able to hear your story, and so I know there are a lot of people who did hear it and said that they were so encouraged by how God has been working. So, Miles, I'm just going to turn it over to you and share your story. What has God done in your life?
Well, God has glorified Himself in my life. He's shown Himself. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love to share it.
Yeah.
It's an honor to come to FBC and see just how beautiful God has a way with people and how He can, gather them into one group. So I was just explaining to them when we were there, just how an honor it was to be there, that they would be willing to listen to a Native American about mission work. And that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot in the churches. So I was really, really grateful. I was really grateful for family camp, even how people are willing to come out and serve us. That doesn't get talked a lot about, but it's scarce out there. But to see it, to be a witness of it, it was so amazing to see God work. So I shared a bit about my testimony. I call it a hope story.
Okay.
It's the way we get to explain the hope that we found in Jesus. So we call it a hope story.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And so I started sharing about the world I grew up in and how it was different than what other people may see in their lives. So I was just sharing how I grew up in a world where it was broken. I immediately knew it was broken. The way I see my family grow up, and it turned out to be my dad left when I was at a young age.
Okay.
And my mom, she had to find a way to keep us alive. It was me and it was two other younger siblings.
Okay.
And this is the kind of example that I had growing up. And what she would do was she would go to jobs. She was only like 23, 24 at the time. Okay. So she had me when she was 20.
Okay.
And so she was a young single mom trying to figure out how to raise these three kids. And it's not like she had a lot of support. There's a lot of brokenness all the way around across the board. She didn't have her dad growing up. And I knew that as we looked at our outer family, seeing our cousins and how they live, seeing my uncles and aunties, their families and stuff, it's just broken all the way around. Okay. And so we didn't have much support. So when she was trying to do it, she had to do it all on her own. And so what I seen was a world where she would go from job to job, still trying to do college, trying to do the right things with her life, but she never had time for us. Okay. And so a lot of times I had to live and raise myself up. Oh, okay. And so I was the older sibling, and I had to teach my brother and sister how to go through life, and especially try not to get in trouble with my mom. Okay. And really trying to work our way around that. And so this kind of set up a perspective for me. Okay. The perspective was, there's a responsibility that you have to take in this world. And I felt that weight early on because I had my siblings by my side, and I seen my mom, how she was trying to work to get us to the next pay period and figure out how she had to, make, while she was working and stuff, how to find a babysitter or to find a relative to watch us. Okay. And if she wasn't successful, it was around 7 or so that I had to watch my siblings on my own. Wow. And we just had to be at the apartment by ourselves, and I had to figure out how to get them off the bus, or when we were there and she was working, that I would have to learn how to cook and clean and take care of stuff. And so again, I felt this sense of responsibility, and I have to know what's going on, or else we're not going to make it through. My mom had 2 hands, and they were both used for work, and she needed an extra one for us. So that's kind of what we did, taking care of ourselves. Okay. And so I also explained how in my life I had to live with my people as the Meskwakis,
Okay.
and I also lived away, and it was this constant moving back and forth.
Okay.
So my mom, she would always have to find new places to live and try to get new jobs and try to progress her life forward. At the same time, we would have to do school and all that, and so she would have to juggle that life. Now when school was over, we would get to go back to the settlement where I'm from,
Okay.
and I would get to see like my family back at home.
Okay. And where is this?
And so this is the Meskwaki settlement is in East Central Iowa.
Okay.
And I think we're the only tribe in Iowa.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
it gives you a good idea. We're about 8,100 acres.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
about the size of a town.
Okay.
Small
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
Not like Winchester.
Okay.
And we get to go there, and it's all of our land and stuff, and we have relative after relative, house after house. We know everybody lives, and everybody knows everybody. That's kind of where I come from.
Okay.
But what that also comes with is that brokenness gets shared around, and it's a big deal when someone passes away. And I realized that when we were growing up in that kind of world, and I wanted to learn more of my traditions. When we looked at that world, we also seen that we try to be survivors. The world we live in now is different than what we used to live in couple hundred years ago.
Right.
And we're put on this reservation, and there's a whole America around us, and we're trying to adapt and change while also trying to keep what our heritage, what we have to keep alive. And I seen the importance of all that, and I wanted to learn more, but they weren't really good teachers.
Okay.
And so I didn't really have a good understanding about my heritage, about all the deeper traditional understandings of spirituality. And so I didn't really get a good grounding in that.
Okay.
And so, my family was kind of really close. But at the same time, they didn't have any of these deep family values either. It was kind of just making sure everyone's around, we're close. We kind of take care of one another. But after that, there's just a lot of ideas around. So the reason I'm explaining all this is because, I didn't really have that grounding to have the responsibilities figured out.
Okay.
I needed a lot of answers, and I needed a lot of reasons why we do stuff. And I didn't really have good grounding on some truths that are out there, at least that were out there for me. So I think in all of this, life started to get harder, and I got older, and the bills kept going up, and so the heat starts cranking, and what ends up happening is I get to around 12 years old, and this is when I start thinking about taking my life.
Wow.
And I just remember that day I was really thinking about it, and I was trying to figure out methods. So it was farther out. I was like, oh, I don't even know how you would do it, I learned that when people died in these ways that it takes a while, and I was scared of that.
Yeah.
So I was really thinking about methods, and I remember pondering on it for a few days, just like I just was really in that deep, dark spot. And then after I kind of started getting some ideas on how I would do it, then I started thinking like, wait, if I do this, I leave my brother and sister behind, and they're left to deal with my mom by themselves. And I was like, well, I don't even know what to do. I can't take this life much longer. What do I do? But I was like, there's got to be an answer out there somewhere. And so I was around 12 thinking all this, and I was like, there's got to be an answer. So I was like, well, I'm 12 now. 18 is 6 years away. It's a lot of years left, but can I do it? And I was like, I think I can get to 18. So I was like, there's got to be something, but I'll see what I can do once I'm 18, because then I can get out of here. And so I kept going. You get into high school, and that's when you start the heat's cranking up still. And now you realize people have methods for dealing with that, and it's the substances.
Right.
People bring and it's like alcohol, drugs, stuff like that.
Right.
Marijuana, but it's really different than the way you'd probably hear it, like here in Winchester. The way we get to see the substances, they're really normal.
Okay.
They're all around us, and all of our immediate family, they all partake in it.
Okay.
A lot of them get drunk or Yeah, and the farther ones get like on drugs and stuff.
Okay.
And so I remember being little and sneaking stuff like that. And a lot of me and my cousins would like sneak a beer from the fridge, or there were cigarettes everywhere. So we would just like, it'd be easy. And of course I get, as a kid, you get, it's like disgusting.
Right.
And I don't like that stuff. But then you find a reason for it in all the stuff.
Wow.
So my answer became, substances and friendships, relationships, started dating around and stuff. But really, after a while, I got to around my sophomore and my junior year, and I started seeing there was consequences behind all of that. People would get addicted, and some people would die of overdose, or some people would die of the liver.
Oh, yeah. Cirrhosis of the liver.
Cirrhosis of the liver. You see a lot of that stuff happening, get diabetes, and then they have to do stuff their whole life. Wow. So I started seeing these negative effects, and I was like, I can't really just medicate myself. They have these bad consequences. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can do this much longer. I don't know if I want to. But everybody else was doing it. And so for the moment, I was still learning how to smoke weed and, medicate it. But then I realized that it runs out. Yeah. And so I'd run out of stuff. I didn't have money for it. And I went through some days without it. And I was like, man, I need it. But then I realized in that moment that it wasn't the answer. So that wasn't the answer either. Right. It was only a medication. It wasn't the cure. Yeah. And I get to this point where I look around at all of my answers. I put all my cards on the line. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm starting to get to my junior year, my senior year. Then after that, I'm 18. I have to be a man and decide what I want to do with my life. At the time when I was going to high school, I was going to this Native American boarding school. Okay. So I'm setting the stage. I went to a boarding school, and here I would escape my mom, escape a lot of the abuses or stuff that I would experience there. And I went to this boarding school. It's federally owned, so it's like taken care of by the federal government. So basically it's free. And so when I went there, I went to see how there are different natives from all over the country. They go there and they're experiencing the same brokenness. And so we got to talk about stuff, and we really related to one another. And that's when I realized I found my people. I was like, yes, you guys get it. You guys understand that there's stuff, and we get to laugh about it and joke about it. And it's far away though, because we're all escaping from it at the boarding school. And it was my way of escape. And so that got me through my high school years. We would all still smoke and find stuff to sneak in. But it goes on like this for some years. But of course, we have to leave. The school year is over, and we have to go back to the world. And I kept just waiting for that next year to come up. And then this is around, so I'm 22. And it was around my senior year when COVID hit. And so my escape got taken away from me. And I had to go face my home back where everything is rough. And back where I needed answers. And I couldn't escape from it anymore. I couldn't hide from it. So what do I do? I get to this point again where I start rethinking about how I can end my life. And I get so justified in it. I have all my reasons for why I should go. And I'm like, I mean, there's really no looking forward anymore. I don't see a future. I don't want a future in all of this for how many more years, only for it to just be like that the whole time. So I was like, I'm going to go. And then again, it kept coming up. My siblings, I'm going to leave them. All those friends that I made, my people that I found at Flight, I'm gonna leave them too. And at this time during COVID, you also hear stuff on Facebook of how they're going back home and they're experiencing the same hurts. And they're getting deeper into their substances. And, then you start hearing about overdoses or accidents or someone, they're getting involved in gangs and they died there. And it's like people like I just went to school with. I went to high school with. And there's a lot of people who today aren't around. And I was like, I knew them in high school. And I seen that reality. And a lot of people seen that reality too. And they started taking their lives. And I started to realize that, man, I might be the next one. I might just be one of those people. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I want to do it. It's beneficial for me to just end it all. But I can't really sign. I didn't want that for everybody else. Like I knew I didn't want that for them. I wanted it for me, and I knew my reasons, but I couldn't justify it for them.
That makes sense.
And this comes from the mentality, like when I was with my siblings, I had to take care of them,
Right.
and they would come with me.
Right.
So I was thinking again with all my friends and stuff that I was signing off on suicide with the people who already went. And that if I go, all the people that follow after, I was the example.
Yeah.
And I'm justifying all that by that action.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know if I can do this for that reason. So I started to realize that I need answers, because I'm not fighting just for myself, but I'm fighting for all of them.
Right.
They need an answer just like I do.
Right.
And so I just kept watching the scene go. Everybody's are falling and getting depressed and hiding and all that stuff. And I dedicated some of my time to find this answer, but I didn't know what it was.
Right.
I dropped out of high school and everything just so I can figure this answer. I figured
Wow.
even getting a diploma doesn't mean nothing if it doesn't do anything with this.
Okay.
So I needed answers. And this is when I start to go and think about all these little answers that I could possibly have. So it was like my traditional background. I seeing if there's answers there. There's religions all over the world, and there could be answers there. One of them may be true. There's like the secular idea of how we can start colonizing the world and colonizing the space, and get really progressed as humanity.
Right.
There's a bunch of ideas. There's philosophies, everything.
For sure.
And one of them's got to be right, and one of them would have to be able to justify all the stuff that I went through to continue living. So I was like, something's got to happen, and if I find that none of them are, then it would be justified. And I get into this nihilism, and it only makes sense.
Right.
In this time, there was a man who was good to me. He was a chaplain at that boarding school that I went to.
Okay.
And he would just keep asking me about my day. So he would ask me, hey, how are you doing? And, you say, oh, yeah, I'm good. And it's simple. You just say, really? And then, no. We're not really. And so he let me to open up. And a couple of days go by, and he asks again, hey, how are you doing? Good. Really? No, not really. Yeah. And over time, we just got closer and closer. He was a chaplain, so I just knew him for the guy who brings snacks and shoes and took care of us. And every once in a while, he'd talk about the Bible, but I wasn't there for that.
Right.
But eventually, since he'd been so good to me, he would start inviting me to Bible study that he would do on Zoom. It was during COVID.
Okay, gotcha.
So he would do this Bible study stuff, and I wasn't about it.
Okay.
I was like, my people, what Christianity has done to us.
Right.
I know that if I were to accept Jesus, what my people would say to me, I would say, if I'm signing off on Christianity, like, what does that mean for my people?
Right.
And so again, just like I was dealing with suicide and having people go this way, I was like, well, Christianity, same thing.
Right.
If I'm bringing people towards Christianity and they're persecuting people and they're hating people and making people do stuff for I don't even know the reason, I don't want to sign off on that and have all these people try to follow me that way. So I was really making sure that I was choosing the right thing. Okay. And another reason why it's important is because we have our answers, right? The substances, the relationships, our traditional ways. But if it speaks truth, we don't want it to be a lie. Right. We don't want to be lied to. We rely on these substances, and they're only good for a while. But we need something sturdy. Right. So he brings up to me Christianity, and I was like, well, I'm not really in a privileged position to disagree immediately. Like, I really don't know. Okay. So I had to humble myself and say, this could be one of the answers. And over time, this guy, he just kept inviting me to Bible study, and I was hearing about life, and he would go through the parables and stuff. Some of it wouldn't make sense, but I remember a few times he would talk about life in a way that I never seen before, and it was better. And it was much, much better. And so I started getting interested, but I started, taking off my check off list on all the religions and stuff. I started going through them, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. This is really weird.
Yeah. Right.
So you start crossing them all off, and Christianity is the one who's kind of sticking around still. Okay. I still haven't figured it out, but it's still one of the answers. And it's really popular, so, it could be. So eventually I gave it the time of day to start really digging in. Okay. I was like, is God real?
Yeah.
So I started doing the hour-long videos of the God debates, is atheist versus Christian or something. And
Okay.
it's really getting into all the heady stuff.
Okay.
You find stuff online and there's big, articles that describe here's this argument for God, and here's the rebuttal, and here's the other response to that, and here's the response to that, and you start.
Right.
I went through a lot of these logic trails, these different arguments about
Okay.
God, and they always seem to jump the gun, I'd say. Like, that conclusion just comes up randomly, and it didn't make sense.
Okay.
And I would see all these arguments, all of them, really. I really weighed it all together, and was like, I can't get there based on any of those. It was like apologetics and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And no one gets saved by apologetics. But that's kind of what I was going through.
Okay.
All the heady stuff, and I couldn't really get there. Eventually, I don't know what made me do it, but I started getting into the Bible myself. I was like, well, I might as well just go to the main source.
Yeah, go to the actual source.
Yeah. And I was like, why didn't I think about this sooner? So I went there and I started looking at what they were talking about.
Okay.
And of course, you get through a lot of the stories. A lot of them don't make sense yet. You get to the Old Testament. It's like, it's a lot of traditional stuff that you have to get into before you can make that make sense. But it wasn't until I started reading stuff like it's in Titus and it's in Hebrews, where it says it's impossible for God to lie. And it's okay. So I found something like logical here. God cannot lie.
Right.
It's impossibility. If he exists, he can't lie.
Right.
And then in Hebrews 5 or 4 or 5, something like that, it talks about how he made it possible through two unchangeable things. He swore it with an oath, and then the fact that it's impossible for him to lie.
Right.
And I was like, oh yeah, he put himself in a box here. If I can find out that he's made this promise and he's a liar, then this proves God, because this God is supposed to not lie.
Right.
So I kept going through the Bible, and I read it in Titus 2, and I just kept going through it. And then I got to Matthew chapter 6, where he talks about the responses. So he says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. This is Jesus talking. And I realized that this is one of the promises.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, it's simple. I get to call on God, and he says, I'll find him. If I knock, the door will be opened.
Yeah.
And so of course I just get to call on him, and if he doesn't respond, well, he's not real, he's a liar. And so I found this little pocket of, where I could test this. And so eventually I just kept it as a piece of knowledge at the moment, and I kept going through, and I think life got harder. So there was a week where life got hard, and I was like, man, I need this answer. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it really weighed on me. And so I was like, okay, I just have to pray, or what? And I had to figure this out. But I think in my heart, I was like, God, if you're real, I just need to know. Like it was a urgency.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I needed to figure this out, because if I don't, I'm gonna go, and everybody else will come with me. And I think when I prayed that in my heart, and I started really learning more, I can't tell you a direct day, but it was within that week that God started revealing himself to me. All of the truth started to make sense, and he started to show what Jesus does for me, what sin was, and further what he was planning to do all along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's this kind of stuff that was revealed to me that I started to find myself believing.
Okay.
And so it wasn't really a confession. I think it's true. Wow. And I started really thinking about it a little bit. And then you start to realize, if this is true, what all of that means.
Yeah.
And then he started highlighting the world around me. Man, if that's true, we're broken right now. If it's true, God wants this light to come into the world. If this is true, we get to receive life based on what Jesus has done.
Yeah.
And I started getting joy in my heart. And I started to realize what this would mean for my people, for my siblings, for my family, for all the friends and stuff that are struggling right now. I know what this would mean for all of them.
Yeah.
And I took that step. I started to believe.
Wow.
Because I knew what it would do, not just for me, but for everybody.
Right.
And it was worth it, to keep living. because despite all the stuff that happens in the world, this is what we have to look forward to.
Right, exactly.
So I really got into it. For 3 months. I just started learning and studying, and I explain it like I learned twice as fast. I was reading twice as fast with the Bible. I just kept going, and I was reading and it just all like came. I didn't have to dig too hard. It was just all making sense now. So that same chaplain guy, he invites me to this camp.
Okay.
And it's a Native American discipleship, Christian camp.
Okay.
Of about 500 or so Native young people.
Wow.
15 to 30.
Okay.
They would go to this place every year. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm interested. They're talking about Jesus, of course, and I was like really excited. I get to that camp, and it's in the summer.
Okay.
So I go there, and of course you start seeing people all over the place, and I was like, these are natives, and they're coming to know about Jesus and reading the Bible. Like I thought we were all against this.
Right.
But there's this whole group of people, and I was like, okay, that's cool. It's really, really cool to see that people are committed. Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah. But it wasn't until this moment that I seen God different. I would see churches, and they would seclude themselves to their building. I seen, Christians who were just really passive, and they would come at you and attack you off their beliefs. And, I seen like hostility in Christians, or just like, I'm not interested in you. And so I didn't really see the church or anything like that as big. And so I didn't see God that big.
Right.
But when this moment at the camp, I was running late. They were doing their big their chapel time. So it was like everyone was in the auditorium, all 500 something of them. And they do worship and they do the teaching. But I was late for that little session. So I was like running, I was trying to run over, and everybody was already in there. I walked through the doors, and you start hearing the drums and the guitar and all that, and they're singing. And I was like, oh yeah, this is so cool. It's like a concert. Yeah. So I walked in there, and I see, the lyrics, and it's like worship songs, like praising God, and all these people in the auditorium, and it's dark in there. And I was like, wow, this is cool. But then God reveals something to me there. He allows me to zoom out and look what he's doing. Yeah. He shows me that despite what I thought, there are 500 Native young people, the least you would probably expect to see this. Yeah. And they're all in this room worshiping God. And I realized the thing that day, that God is active. That he's not this dormant God. He's fighting for all of us. And it's fruit right there. You see how these people come from all over the country. They're coming from Washington, New York, Arizona, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Iowa, and they're all coming to this one place, and they know the same God. Right. So I seen that, and I was like, man, this is not what I thought. Yeah. And it changed my whole world. So then after this camp, you start to see they have a ministry opportunity where you can go with this tour, and it's about 30 Native young people. And what they do is they go from reservation to reservation to do community events. And what they would do there is play basketball, give out free food, play games, play music, stuff like that in the community event. But throughout it, you would share your hope story. And they would go out there and tell it for 5 minutes, and then you start telling people about Jesus, the gospel. And I was really interested. I was like, yeah, I just figured this out. This is amazing. Yeah. So I applied, and then they accepted me. And so I was only about 3 months into my Christian life, and I got this opportunity to share Jesus with people. And that's where I seen the difference. The difference is we get to walk with this God. We have to rely on him in life. Yeah. It's not just this life we get to receive. Like, we get to live it through him, rely on him. So I felt all of these things. And for that whole month, it was just like seeing people, and I get to see what he sees. So I seen like how that's who I was. Yeah. But I seen the lost on their face. Right. I see that they're lost, and I'm like, they need to know Jesus. Yeah. They need to know him. Right. But we're only here for 3 days, so you gotta be snappy. And I know how it sounds, because if someone were to say to me before, like Jesus or Bible or Christianity, words like that, you get a ring in your ears, and you're like, I don't want to hear that. Yeah. But to tell them that I had to figure out how you would. And so that month, God just revealed all that to me, that he's active, that he's working in our lives, and it's a whole life that you would never live without him. Right. So he's a difference maker. Yeah. And from there, I realized that that's what I need to do with the rest of my life. The people, I know everybody I know doesn't know this. Right. Nobody knows Jesus where I come from. And they're missing out. Yeah. they're missing out on what life is. And I get to sit there and enjoy. I'm good. So I remember I was sitting back at home after we got back from that mission trip.
Okay.
And I was sitting at home and I was like, man, I'm good. Like I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
I know what's going to happen with me when I die, and I have all the answers, and I know my purpose now. I know my identity.
Yeah.
I'm good. And then God allowed me to zoom out again, and he made me look at my family, my friends, everybody online and stuff, and they're not good. So then I think then is when I knew my call, that I'm going to be someone who shares Jesus with people. That's all I have to do now.
Yeah.
I don't need anything anymore. Like, I can suffer and die in this world and still go to heaven and see God. Like, I'll be good. You can't do anything to me anymore.
Right.
And their need is important.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I have my mentality today.
Okay.
And so for 3 years now, I've been working on trying to make sure I can get this message to my people.
Yeah.
And to let them know what life looks like now.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do with the rest of my life. It's a life of joy.
Yeah.
And I get to meet all these people. God's touching people all over the world. He gets to do churches like this and glorify himself in different contexts. And it's just amazing to see God work, and nothing's impossible for him.
Yeah.
And so I walk with this God, and I always encourage people to do the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just life-changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just so incredible, Miles, to hear you share your story. And I'm just struck by how, like, God has just continually, like, the Matthew 6 passage that you shared, like, you've always questioned, and he met you in that answer. And not only did he just give you an answer, he exceeded, like, 3 months, you said, after you'd been reading the Bible, then you're going to this camp and you're seeing 500, and you're like, I didn't know this even existed. And like, even that gift of, like, community, of saying, God saying, like, no, I'm invested in the Native peoples. I want, them. And so that's just so encouraging. And so kind of like you talked a lot about, like, your response to, like, suicide and struggling with that was, again, the responsibility of your family. And again, that was also your initial, like, pushback against Christianity. So how has your family, your community responded to you now that you are a believer and you're so passionate? And I mean, they have to see your peace now, and that this joy that you have that you didn't have before. So what's that been like?
I think, I wear it on me, just the light.
Yeah.
And
you do.
All you really do is enjoy God in your life, and it all just comes out naturally. So when I do this, there's a few believers that I got to meet already that are either in my tribe. There's about 60 of them out of 1,000 or so. Okay. So it's about 5% or 6%. It's like, it's not a lot of people. And when I did get to meet these people, they didn't even know Jesus like I did.
Wow.
Like, I knew him as this intimate God who's doing stuff in this world, and who's in the same fight that I am. And I want my people to have life, just like I got it. And he wants that. And I didn't see it on their faces. They kind of still had this traditional mentality, like church mentality. Where they would, they just know that we go to church and we do some things, and we kind of just keep going on with regular life. But with Jesus and Christian flavor. But, but it's not like the way I know it, the way where I get to dedicate my whole life to it.
Yeah, it's not your lifestyle. It's just kind of like, you said, a flavor, like an add-in type thing.
It's an add-in. And I was like, man, people don't get it. Even if they're believers, they don't get the Jesus that I know. And so I guess I've probably shown a lot of that too. Just showing the difference that I've seen God. And I show it in my life. I try to be as loving as possible and build these relationships, and hopefully you get to reveal God's love in that way. And so I really have shown myself to be at least like a stable person. And I'm not really stable. Like, if you know me, I'm struggling here to there. I'm never really struggling. I know God's got me. But, I have that security there. And I think people sense that, and that's why when I started showing up to all these people, a lot of them would ask for help. A lot of them ask for rides or for money or to show up for something. And so I just kind of know where I've already been invited in these people's lives. And I hope that when I start to do this stuff, I'll have that greater audience to directly share Jesus. And so I've had the opportunity to do that with a few people. And, they're alive today because of what he's done with me and what he opened their hearts and stuff. Yeah. And then with my friends, it's kind of harder because a lot of times they also say, oh, good for you. And what they do is anything that I'm doing, like it's changed me. They all they compartmentalize it into just myself. Okay, that's what you want to do with your life. Right. And so they think I'm still doing the Christian flavor thing where I'm like, yeah, this is just the way I want to live now. I want to go to church. And, you know, nobody wants to do that culturally. But if you know what it means, like you would be willing to go to church to dress up and read your Bible and watch Christian movies, listen to Christian music, you know. You don't get that if you don't know Jesus. But when you know him and how good it is, then all that makes sense. And so they kind of just see that part in me. And I'm trying to explain to them that's not why I do any of that. It's not because of the changing culture. It's not because the culture is so cool. It's because this God is interacting with people in a way that they just get to express life. So I'm trying to make sure to get that communicated, and it takes time.
Right. It does. I mean, I think if you look at your own life and I look at my life, like, I feel like we get this sense of urgency, but God is not like, he's slow, and not in like a bad way, but he's all about the relationship and getting us to know him. And he takes his time, and sometimes we don't understand it, or it'd be like, why didn't you just like communicate this with me so much sooner? But he has this perfect plan, and he executes it according to his good will.
That's right.
So we just have to trust in that. So then transitioning a little bit. So how did you get, I don't even know this, how did you get connected to family camp? Like the one that we did just a couple weeks ago.
It's an interesting story. So before I would go out to my people, like what I was talking about, I realized I probably needed more training. I didn't know all the administrative stuff of a church, or even like what a church really is. Like exactly. I know it's just a group of people. They come together to read the word and pray together and stuff. But I didn't really know what that was yet. And so I was like, I probably need some more training. And so I went with that same ministry that does the mission tours and stuff, that camp. It's all the same ministry. And they just recently opened up this, it's called the Leadership Center. But it's where they would want to disciple young Native people to be full-time missionaries and go out to their people. And so I took this opportunity, and it was only for 9 months. It was like a gap year program. And I took it, and part of that program, they do an internship. And so with that internship, I got sent out to North Dakota. And that's where one of the pastors for family camp is there. And so in that internship, towards the end of the little the time we had, he brought us out to a meeting in Bismarck. And that's kind of where I got to meet all the pastors. And they were having the meeting about starting up family camp. So that's kind of how I started hearing about it. Now, I was only connected for the internship part. And so I was about to go back and finish the program and then go home. And that's kind of what I was thinking. But they were like, yeah, I mean, if you guys can find a way out here, you guys are definitely welcome to come. And I was like, really? Yeah, I'm going to try to come here. And so the summer happened and the program ended. And I got back home, and that's kind of when I was like, you know what, there's something going on in North Dakota right now. I think I'm going to go check it out. And so the first, reboot of the family camp, that's when I went over. And I seen what God was doing at family camp, and I was like, yes, this is amazing. This is families. I know a broken family, but God's like teaching families here about who he is. And I was like, yeah, this is so good. And then they just kept inviting me year after year to come to family camp, and I got to serve even last year. It was a really good connection. But I think they were really inviting. I didn't have to be there. I wasn't associated, but they were just like, come with us. And I was like,
okay, that's so cool. That's very cool. And then so this past year, your mom also came to family camp. So how did that come about?
So in the process of being a Christian and figuring out who I can tell about Jesus, the hardest one was my mom. She was the one I had a terrible relationship with. I didn't like her, and I didn't want to be around her. But when I became a Christian, you start hearing about forgiveness and forgive your enemies, and I was like, I know it's a hard thing for everyone, but I know it's hard for me. So I shared in that, and then God made a call to me, and he was like, right now I just want you to be, I'm calling you to be a good son. And I didn't know what that meant, but I was like, I knew I knew what he was talking about.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I have to take this. And so I started, I knew that nobody's going to take initiative in my life to build relationships or talk about Jesus. I knew I had to take the initiative. And so with my mom, I had to come and reconcile with her. I told her first. So I was going to tell her that all the things she did wrong, I planned that. I was like, this is what you did to me. This is why I'm so hurt by you.
Yeah.
But then in the time I went to go visit her again, God told me to just say sorry. And I was like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And then he pointed out some things about how I wasn't a good son because I wasn't listening to her. I disrespected her and didn't really respect her. And so he showed me that part about myself, and he said, first say sorry, and then you can be open about why you're hurt. And I was like, okay, we don't do this stuff, by the way. Like, nobody really reconciles like this or admits fault. That's not a part of what my family does or what Meskwakis do. So it was a whole new step. But God was leading me through it. And I got to reconcile and tell her about what God's been doing in my life. And I told her my testimony. I told her the gospel that it could be for her too. Everything. We reconciled, and she didn't really respond to that. And so over time, I would try to tell her about what I'm doing. Like, I'm starting to do mission work. I'm trying to reach people, bringing kids to camp. And she would say, oh yeah, that's cool. But she wouldn't really get really involved or ask questions or anything. But it wasn't until this past few months that she started to, when we would come around, we would eat or something, but before she ate, she would wait for me to pray. And that, that's something that she don't do. We don't know what that is, but she was respecting what I believed. And she was like, I think you pray, right? And I was like, okay, let's pray. So I would pray. And then she would eat, and that's when I started to realize maybe she's open to what I'm doing, what I'm talking about. So I invited her to family camp for the 3rd year, and she just got a job where she's off in the summers. So I it was a window, and I was like, yeah, you can come. I'll pay for your admission, and you can just show up in North Dakota. And she was like, I think I will. And I was like, this is just opening. And I was like, this is what I was waiting for. And it's out of my hands. God's working. And I felt really good about it. And she ended up coming. And there she started to see my world a little bit. All the stuff that I've been living around her, the stuff she was avoiding. She got to see the people I'm with, what they talk about. They come from what I experienced, right? They come from reservations all over the place, and the same God is meeting them and teaching them the same truth, and it's for everybody. So she started seeing that bigger world, and I hope that she got something out of it. I tried to talk to her a little bit after, and I don't know if I really got too much of a response yet. But I was like, I know that the seed is planted. And I can trust that God's working in her heart now, and I always pray for her. But it was such a blessed moment to share that with my mom, who's not saved.
Well, that's really incredible, and it'll be exciting to see what God does with that. My last question for you before we wrap up is, what are ways that we at FBC can be praying for you, for your people, and how can we just partner with you in prayer?
Well, we always pray for sending workers out into the harvest. There's a lot of scarcity in Native or spiritual leaders in Native America. And we need a lot of faithful people to come and help us spread this message. We're trying to fulfill the Great Commission. There's not a lot of good stuff happening as far as the mission field out there, and we need a lot of help. So workers into the harvest. Also, we realize as we dig deeper that a lot of churches are struggling. The main thing that's happening in the Native American front of mission is the parachurch organizations are taking the lead. And they're doing a lot of amazing work. They're really explaining Jesus and everything. But the thing about it is they all go to these places or get this teaching, and they go back to churches that don't know how to continue to disciple them, or they don't do too good of a job to bring them together, to teach them one-on-one or anything like that. And so we realize that the greater problem is that the church is down right now. They're surviving. They're kind of being able to sustain themselves, but they're not thriving like God wants us to. And so that's kind of another thing, is bringing out greater teaching, greater discipleship to the churches, and for the Spirit to kind of educate them in wisdom and grace, and for the ability to even prepare the saints for the work of the ministry.
Right.
And so it's a lot of Holy Spirit work out there. So pray for a lot of that. We always talk about Acts 1:8 and how it says, by his power you will go out and be my witnesses. Right. And I remember I heard something one time, and it said, well, if we're not going out and being witnesses, then we must be diluting the Spirit. And we're trying to do this on our own. We're not relying on the Spirit. That's where the power comes, and we're diluting it. And so I know that that's one of the problems that we're starting to see in the church regularly. And then in Native America, we're starting to see that too. And then finally, the last thing is we need the church to see us. And then we need Native America to see the church. And so there's this thing we like to call the double blindness. It's the idea that the Native America can't see the church because of the history of persecution and alienation. And right now it just looks foreign. At the same time, the church can't see Native America. There's not a lot of education on natives. Nobody really knows that either we exist or that we're modernized, or if we're still out there. There's a lot of misunderstandings. And if we were to simply educate the church on Native America, I think a lot of these problems would start to be solved. Just the awareness of us. So there's a lot of prayers that we need for that. Everybody needs to become aware. And hopefully that God would use the church in the greater way of the Great Commission. And we're starting to see a thriving church all over the place. So there's a great amount of work, but God's the one who's going to bring us all that. So a lot of prayer for that.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Miles, for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. I know it's very encouraging for me to hear how God has been working in your life, and I know it will be very encouraging for our listeners. So for our listeners, if you want to learn more about our global church partners, make sure you check out the Mission Stairwell right next to the North Main entrance. And we also love to hear from you guys, so you can send us your thoughts, questions, or requests, and you can do that at fbcva.org/podcast and write us there. Thanks for watching and listening, and remember that it is Christ who is continually building his church until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God.